Association, a lot of that industry forum, we've got some operators, etc., are supporting the activities that we're doing within WAC, and I'll explain what we do in a second. So, do any of you recognise that shop? Some of you should do, so it's just down the street over there. So I was here in, I don't regularly travel to Belfast, and I'm probably the only Englishman in the group, but I was with my son in April, and we just happened to be strolling down the street, and there was this beautiful picture of this tiny little dog who was having a whale of a time with this particular fountain. So it's sort of, I took this picture and it led me to think, this is just one particular moment in time. So if we take now as being this still shot in time, if we go back in time and look at what's come from the web. So when I first browsed the web, which was in about 94, 95, we spoke about browsing the web. We had a browser and we would go onto a website, a portal, and then go to another website and look at that, and we'd go endlessly around various ones, generally looking at news or whatever was there. So what do we do now? Well, I think if you ask my son or daughter what they do, they browse the web. So it's exactly the same term, but actually what they do now is completely different to what I did 16 years ago when I first started. So it sort of led me to think, okay, so how does that apply now? Well, if you look at what a web application is now, what somebody does when they browse the web now, it's much more about using an application than it is actually about using typically what you would have called browsing a website 16 years ago. So the difference to certainly my son or daughter between somebody who wrote a web application and a native application for a desktop is almost inseparable. They wouldn't really know. The fact that they use Facebook is far more important to them than the fact that they are using the web or some other tool to do that job. It's the application, the service that they're using that's the key, not how they're getting there. So they don't care about the technology, although I try to tell them very often that they should do. So in terms of mobile, so I joined Orange back in 1991, so I've been in mobile phones for a very long time. Came into the internet with sort of Unwired Planet back in sort of 99, and seen lots of developments over the last 12 years. And the web was doing really, really well on mobile up until the time that Apple came along with their iPhone. And suddenly the ecosystem suddenly changed, where there were lots of people out there that Apple already had, who were already using iTunes, they were used to buying things, and suddenly they were a readily tapped market that Apple could have for the people who would buy applications. And so the mindset changed from browsing the web in whatever form they wanted, whether that was on a mobile device getting better and better and better using different browsers, or whether it was on a desktop or whatever. And suddenly you end up with a situation that people, they're not doing that on mobile, they're buying an app. And they collect apps either now on their iPads or their Android devices, but it's about collecting applications rather than browsing. But we all know that actually, or hopefully we all know actually, that in the main, most of the applications that you can get on the App Store or Android Marketplace or any others wouldn't actually need to have been developed using a native technology. The vast majority of them could have been developed using web technologies. It's the fact that there's a route to market for applications through Android Marketplace and the App Store that is the most important thing. So where are we with HTML5 on mobile? I'll move on so we can get a bit further and you can ask questions. So I work for wholesale applications community, and we're promoting web technologies. So at the core of what we do, and I'll explain as I go on what we are doing, is we are supporting HTML5 and web technologies. So that is a core part of what you would do to create a WAC application. Secondly, it's about enhancing what's there with HTML5 and giving access to additional capabilities on the mobile device, but also on other devices in the future via JavaScript APIs that you can use just within your within the application. Really. Thirdly, it's about network APIs, so you've got access to things like in-app billing. So once you've got your application to market, you've got the ability to charge for things after the fact, once it's in the user's hands. It's about compliance, both for browsers and for web runtimes. So regardless of whether you're packaging your HTML or whether you are just running through a browser, you want to make sure that the browsers on all of the devices, whether they're WebKit or whatever, are going to interpret that HTML5 correctly. So a large amount of the work that we're doing is to do with compliance programs to make sure that that happens. And lastly, security policy. So it's about making sure that you don't just open up a whole load of new security loopholes by opening up web standard or web technologies on mobile. So with HTML5, you've got two routes. You can go through the browser, put your application on a website and get it to an end user that way. Or you can package it up using the W3C packaging and config spec and get it to a web runtime. And you can recognise some of the names of the companies there, obviously who do browsers, but also who produce these things called web runtimes that execute packaged HTML5 content on a mobile device. And that is fundamentally what WAC is all about. So if you create an application, packaged application of HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, package it up, you can sell it through WAC. And hopefully that shows roughly what it is. So how many of you know the structure of widgets or have used widgets or talked about widgets in the past? One of you, okay. So how many of you have written web applications? Okay, a few of you. So if you write HTML or HTML5, you know that you have tags and you create some structure and some format. CSS provides a style sheet that makes it look nice, and then JavaScript provides your functionality. On a website, you would put those on a server, and a user would use a browser to browse onto that HTML file, wherever it was, and then the service would be served up to you on your browser. With the web runtime, what happens is that you package all of those files up into one container, into the envelope. You provide a config.xml file which provides information about actually what is in the application itself. In other words, what HTML is there, where to go for the JavaScript, what style sheets are there, which images, in what folders, etc. And all you do, it's very, very simple, is you zip it up, just using a zip package, and rename it to .wgt, which is a short form of widget. And then you download it to the device, and the device is the thing that has the web runtime on it, and that executes in the form of, a similar form to the browser, executes that on the mobile device. So why would you actually go for writing an application in HTML5? Well, recently there have been two very good examples of companies who are out there who have been looking at native technologies in the past, but who have started to move down the HTML5 route. So with Financial Times, native apps are simply a bridging solution while web technologies catch up and are able to provide a rich user experience demanded on new platforms. As these improve, we expect to see more HTML5 apps and fewer native apps. Interesting one. But there is always likely to be a market for native apps for specific brands or with deeper integration with the hardware or super-fast performance required. So what that's really saying, so this is coming from a guy who's leading up the FT technology side. What he's really saying is the fact that from their point of view, they see more investment going on into HTML5 than they will see in native applications. But if they want to do something very specific that uses a particular capability on a device, or something uses a lot of processing power or graphics capabilities, then they will use a native app. But other than that, their way forward, what we're talking about at the moment, is very much HTML5. Second one, Facebook, with something they've just recently, or that's recently been shown, Project Spartan. So, a guy called Brett Taylor, who's the CTO of Facebook, he noted that while HTML5 has got a lot of hype in Silicon Valley, he does really believe that it's the long-term answer. Facebook is a bit ahead of the curve currently, with over 125 million of their users accessing Facebook regularly from HTML5 compatible devices. So they're in a position to know the number of people who can actually get access to HTML5 content. But we're putting more in, we're getting to the point where it's becoming a more mature platform. So from their point of view, and what Project Spartan is about, is actually enabling a store, in effect, through Facebook. So you could go through Facebook on your mobile phone, and then you would be able to download apps. So in the same way that you would through the desktop browser with Facebook, you have mobile applications, and those mobile applications would be HTML5. So another point about HTML5 is that, lots of people say, well, if you write with web technology, you don't get access to all the features and functionality and processor speed and graphics capabilities that you get from a native application. But fundamentally, complicated doesn't necessarily make things good. So from a design point of view, and actually writing your application point of view, adding features just because they're there doesn't necessarily make the application any better. So a good example was something like Angry Birds. So with Angry Birds, you've got, I'll sort of show it on my hand. You pull back, you release, and your bird flies through the air towards various pigs and knocks them out of the way. Yeah? Everyone played Angry Birds? Okay. So, how many of you, when it's knocked over almost all of the tower, have moved your phone like that to try to knock over the rest of it? Yeah? Yeah, I said yeah. So, wouldn't a really nice feature be to add the accelerometer in? Well, they've actually decided not to do that. That was a deliberate function, a deliberate decision not to add that, because it sort of goes against the whole physics of the way that they're doing it. So if you added that, it would almost be a cheat. But if you look at what's going on with Angry Birds, the HTML5 version of Angry Birds, which is now on the Chrome store. Did any of you downloaded that? Or used that? Yeah, a few of you. So people have decompiled that now, and there are now ways in which you can create your own stages within Angry Birds and various other things. So by putting it into the web domain, there are now third parties who are coming on with other add-ons to that as time goes on. So why choose HTML5? Well, easier to develop cross-platform. So web is fundamentally cross-platform, and ultimately it is easier to develop one single web application to target multiple devices than it is to write individual apps for iPhone, for Android, for RIM, etc., etc. You've got all of the advantages of web technologies. You've got significant backing from across the industry, and that's not just. I think the one thing that's very easy in mobile to assume is you look at all the companies that are in mobile. And so from my point of view, I look at all that big long list of mobile operators who are part of WAC. We've got 27 operators around the world who are connected. That if you write an application, you get your application to those 27 operators. So I look at those, but it's not just those, it's the people in the internet world who are also supporting HTML5. We're talking about people in automotive. There's a big EU project called Webinars at the moment, with about 30 companies from automotive, companies making TVs, set-top boxes, people from the desktop sphere, from the internet sphere, from the mobile sphere, all working together, fundamentally all about getting web runtimes onto all of those platforms so that you as developers can write one HTML5 application and get that running on all of those devices. I'm not saying you write once and run anywhere, because patently you're not just going to get one application that works equally well on a desktop as it does on a car dashboard, although it could do. It's about the fact that the majority of your code is reusable, and also you can pull in other people's code, either open source or as a mashup, to try to improve the services you're trying to do. So that's the multiple screens. But there are some downsides. It is still evolving. There's still browser-specific tags within HTML5. If you talk to brands, they will be asking for iPhone apps. There are a lack of device-specific capabilities, although WAC is introducing some that will allow you access to things like accelerometer, orientation, etc. And you've got a lack of current testing capabilities. So if you want to write a mobile application using HTML5, it is a very easy thing to do, but from the point of view of looking at the testing tools that are out there, and our point of view, would you agree with that? From the point of view of testing HTML5? Yeah?
Yeah.
So what's WAC doing? I'll speed through this. So it was all, the operators got together about 18 months ago and said, okay, what we want to do is increase the overall market for mobile apps. How do we do that? Firstly, to encourage the open standardised technology, so that's about the web technology part. Secondly, about enabling a distribution channel for apps. So it's all about getting apps from developers as quickly and easily as possible through to as many application stores as possible around the world from our membership. And lastly, to encourage the use of network APIs. So operators have lots of capabilities within their networks, the ability to do in-app billing so that the user gets charged for a service through their operator's bill, authentication, location, etc., etc. So where do we sit? We sit in between the developer and the application retail store. So as a developer, you write your web application, you package it up as a widget, you submit it to WAC once, you say where you want it to be sold, we get it to those markets through the relationships that we have, they're sold to end users, and we do the settlement with you as a developer once in your own currency. So you don't have to worry about the fact that it's being sold in China or in the Philippines or in the US, and have to worry about different tax regimes and different currencies, etc. It's all done once. So it's worldwide, it's distributed by a single website. It's as simple as apply to be a member or to be a developer on WAC, submit your application, we supply feedback to you on how many are sold, where they're sold, etc. And sales reports, and we also give post-sale in-app billing capabilities through the network APIs. There's an SDK plug-in through Eclipse, so that you can go on and very simply create your web application. I presume many of you already use Eclipse. And just to summarise, so WAC is about web standards, it's about devices, browsers and runtimes, making sure that they're compliant. That's the work that we're doing, a lot of the work. Worldwide distribution, so we provide that wholesale, that real wholesale access for you as a developer, get your applications through to end users. Tools and support so that we can assist you as much as possible in getting your apps written. And coming back on that point that was made about testing, is improving the testing tools that are available to help you. And lastly, providing the network APIs that give you access to the in-app billing and location and authentication functions. And that's me.